So the reason why this looks a little weird is it was supposed to be another talk about CMMC. And I was messaging back and forth with Steve and I said, instead of like speaking to the crowd about CMMC, it would probably be good if we had multiple C3PAOs come up where you could ask questions and then we could interact and we could go back through maybe what you've learned over the last day and a half. So apologies for the switcheroo on the schedule and how we're doing things, but we just thought it might be more impactful to the group in total. So these guys have had no prep. We are flying and building the plane all at the same time while we're doing this. So not that you guys have ever done that in business, right? But we're working together as a team. So I thought I'd just start off with some questions, and then we can kind of go from there. So from the show, from what we've heard thus far, what are some things that you guys see during assessments that are common mistakes that OSCs make? You want to start with that one? There you go.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I think it's the preparation. Some of them are better prepared, and some of them are less prepared. Obviously, if they have internal, like if they're like an internal CCP, or if they have hired a consultant that already gone through the gap analysis, at least they are prepared. They know what to have some expectation, understanding what to show to the assessors during the assessment. Those tend to do better during the assessment, and those are, I would say, those are the most important thing. One of the important things that you should, kind of don't do it for the first time. I think we mentioned that. Don't do it for the first time during the actual certification assessment.
I get actually a question for you. I hear poor documentation, specifically with the SSP, not being detailed enough. Like they haven't gone all the way down to the actual control objective. It's too high level.
Yeah. So I think the documentation is definitely important. We want to see the documentation to be able to cover each security requirements have assessment objectives, right? So they can have the narrative about how do they perform these security, the practices for satisfying these security requirements. It doesn't have to be like very specific. Assessment A, assessment B, assessment objective A, B, C, D. You can put in a narrative. Each sentence, we can actually see each sentence. This first sentence covers assessment objective ABC, right? Second sentence covers CBE or something like that. So as long as the OSC have the enough detail that satisfy and covering the assessment objective for each of the requirements, I think that's okay. If there are some things that is not covered, we are going, as an assessor, we are going to ask during the assessment. We are going to ask for additional explanation, and that will allow, if it's only a documentation, we see you have the practices, but we don't see it documented, will allow the opportunity for the OSC to add additional clarification into their SSP, right, during the assessment. So we'll allow that, but as long as they already have the practice in place.
Well, let's but just to add in a little bit. So even if we get into the administrative things of the documentation, I think sometimes we see that we have free documents online, right? Policy packs, or you might even go invest in, was it Compliance Forge or someplace else? You go download a big policy pack, and you're like, okay, check the box, and done. Not really, right? So because some of the things inside those policy packs, you don't do as a company. Like you think that you're going to be fine, but I'll give you an example. Maybe you have some examples too. But you talk about the complexity of your passwords, right? Right? It has to be truly defined. Inside those policy packs, they'll say something that you might not be doing. Could even be incident response. Like it might say that you're going to respond to an incident response within 3 hours. Well, don't really have artifacts that show that you've responded to an instant response within 3 hours, right? Those are the gotchas that are out there that I think that sometimes, even though you can check that box that you've done something, you still have to take that one extra mile, right, to go through, truly read those documents and understand those and say, do I really do this or not, right?
Yeah, and you just want to make sure you are doing what's been documented. I used the example yesterday, vulnerability assessment. If you do a scan once every month, and your documentation, we do this once a week. There's a mismatch, right? So just make sure that what you do is versus what you documented, which are in sync. Templates, there are a lot of templates out there. Just make sure that don't just replace the logo with your logo, and that's the worst thing that will happen.
And we've seen that before, so that's why we're not like, it's one of those things where you kind of go, wait, no, that's there. The GRC platforms, I think we've got some great GRC platforms in the room. We've got others that are not here today, but if you put garbage in, you get garbage out, right? So just signing up for that contract for that GRC platform is great, but they're only as good as the information you actually put in and what you get out of those platforms, right? So you guys want to talk about GRC platforms for a few minutes? I think that would probably help the crowd too, what you've seen from importance in that, if it's helped really, if it hasn't helped, if you're old school like some of us that do Microsoft Office. So.
Okay. So for GRC, as an assessor, I mean, we know there are a few GRC tools, like the control map. So there are others, like Feature Feed, there are other tools, GRC tools. I mean, we don't have a preference, right? We just like, that's the tool. If there are tools that can help you, that's great. In terms of the documentation, what we look for is that documentation and the artifacts, evidence. When we're conducting the assessment, we're looking for those information. If you have the artifacts, the assessment objectives, all the documentation for your security requirements, all put it into your GRC tool, that's great. But when we are doing the assessment, if you want to use it really depends. If you have the GRC tool, that's easy for the assessor to use, and it's read-only. That's very important. We only want to have the read-only access. We don't want to modify anything, right? If you have that, you provide to us, we will be able to go into your system to take a look at your security requirements and verify the artifacts. But you just have to make sure the GRC tool that you use at the end of the assessment, whatever we saw during the assessment, you have to keep a copy of everything that you provided to us. And you have to hash it. That means you have to be able to export all the documents to a file format and be able to hash all the files that you provided to us during the assessment. And you have to keep it, zip it up, save that files for 6 years. So you have to make sure that your GRC tool have that capability, because otherwise it will be it will not satisfy that requirement.
All right. Ashley, you got
I have a question. Are there any GRC tools that don't allow that feature? No hashing?
I'm not familiar with all the GRC tools out there, but I've seen some of them may or may not be able to export everything easily.
Yeah. I think there's some companies that just choose to move forward with Microsoft Office products, right? I mean, I know that sounds just like, but I'm going to hire a consultant. The consultant's going to help me. I don't really need the bigger GRC platform. It's a business decision. It's one of those things of, do you think that the GRC platform can allow you to accelerate your compliance because you're not having to hire that extra person on staff to kind of walk you through those things? I think those are the business decisions that you have to weigh, right? But again, if you don't understand what the platform is saying, it's very hard for you to actually put the right information into the platform. That's when we would say, have you found an RPO to help you with these kinds of things, right? It's like, I can go buy TurboTax, but am I going to hit that little button that gets the live assistant on there to help me every once in a while, right? Those are the kinds of things that are out there.
Yeah, and also just want to make sure that the tool you have, the GRC tools, will be able to support your complexity of your environment as well. Because if your environment is very complex, it's better. It's a good tool that you can use, but in terms of planning, understanding the requirements, the scoping, everything, the planning part, you still need to have somebody that really understands CMMC to help you, and to then put in the information into the GRC tool.
I think that's another point. We can move to that next point. So how many people in the room use secure enclaves versus not? Secure enclaves? Just a few? Everybody else has lifted in your entire firm to be fully compliant with CMMC? Is that consensus? Reason why I want to bring this up is secure enclave or not, right? Those are things that businesses are trying to evaluate today. The first question that I ask to a firm is, how much of your actual work is DoD related? That's a big business decision. If you're trying to bring your commercial company up to full compliance for CMMC, but you really only have 10% of your business is DoD contracts, is that the right financial decision for you as a firm, right? You have to cost benefit analysis, right? We kind of all go through. There's different options out there. You can hire a vendor to build a secure enclave. You can work with your managed services provider to build an enclave. But you've seen from assessments, I know we have, that an assessment on enclave is pretty cut and dry, right? It's very, because it's all about the scope, right? And
Yes.
it's a reduced scope. So we are able to offer better pricing on enclaves than what we are for full environments. When you do that, because it's a lot less complexity. Would you say?
Yeah, it's really, we scope depends on the size and complexity, and also the number of sites to visit as well. Right? So you are correct. Then there are some company, there are 99.9% that is all government, right? 100% government. It makes sense for them to go enterprise. But if there are 10% government, then they'll just do an enclave. Some of them may just we're a staffing company. All these staff, they use the government furnished equipment, right? GFE laptops. We don't even have any CUI, but in order for us to be competitive, we need to create this enclave and just be competitive. Yeah, so they have the enclave in place, but saying that they are looking for the future, they may not have this CUI today, but they can say, if we have the CUI in the future, this is how we're going to place, where we're going to place into the enclave. Yeah, so there are different ways that you can plan for your environment. Enclave is, if you don't have a lot of government contracts, it's a good way to move forward.
Yeah, some costs I would say that you need to evaluate with this, because these are questions that I would advise my clients to ask, and maybe you're not thinking about, and Kyle and Ashley, you guys add in, but the cost of, say that you choose Microsoft over Google, because I can speak to Microsoft really easily. The cost for GCC or GCC high licenses for Microsoft, let's take the GCC high licenses because you have an ITAR requirement, right, for your firm, along with CUI. You're going to spend anywhere from $950 to $1,100 for those licenses per user per year. Depending upon the size of your company, that can add up really quickly, right? If you go an enclave, you only have 5 to 10 users that are dealing with this data, you've just reduced that cost considerably, right? There are enclave providers out there that offer fully managed solutions for an enclave for $5,000 a month. There are some others that will charge you $110,000 and we'll see you in 6 months. So you really need to do your interviews with companies right before you make those decisions. If the company's trying to push licenses on you and they're trying to push you to go to GCC high when you don't have an ITAR requirement, etc., buyer beware. Just listen, ask the questions, go through the cost benefit analysis. Try to say, do I really need to buy 100 of these licenses, or could I get by with just 10? Those are the kinds of things that, you know, if you had a professional like one of our firms sitting there asking those questions, we're looking out for your bottom dollar, right? But for today, while we're trying to help you with this, you need to look and ask those questions to them, because that's really important. That could mean the benefit of getting a contract or not. The other thing to think about for enclaves is how rapid that they can be deployed. So if you're trying to lift an entire company, there was not FUD when they were out there talking about the fear and uncertainty about how long it takes for a firm to be fully compliant. If you think about that, once you document everything, you get your entire environment fully compliant, then you have to train everybody, you have to do all those things. That's what they're talking about, the months and months and months to be fully compliant for your organization. I've seen organizations build compliant environments in an enclave, have a staff ready and trained and everything else in 60 days or less. That matters to you as a business. You're ready to go request that assessment just as soon as you're able to put that 110 score, because you're going to file 2 scores, enterprise score and an enclave score, right? And the enterprise score only needs to be level 1 compliant. So again, these are things to be thinking about. There's some new language coming out from the NDAA. It's talking about how you need to scan your open environments to find CUI. I don't know if you guys are paying attention with the NDAA with the shutdown and everything else, but there's some decent language inside of that that's affecting CMMC. We've got a vendor in the room, they do scans for that to find that data and then push that data into those secure enclaves that you're being fully compliant, because what you don't want to happen is a breach to happen. Somebody takes CUI from your non-compliant environment, and then you've got a whole different thing that you got to worry about, right? So I think that's important. But what do you guys think about, is there anything more that you can think of about enclave versus non?
Just one other point. You heard about like a VDI, the virtual desktop infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a laptop that's using VDI, you're connecting to another machine in the cloud, or then the laptop that I have the VDI client is out of scope. So you might, I know there are a lot of construction companies and trailers and all that. That might be one of the good solutions for you, but you can actually talk to some of the MSPs here. I think they might be able to actually, just build up something like that for you, because that will be a lot easier, because you don't have to worry about, hey, all the laptops I'm carrying with me to the trailers, are they in scope? They don't have to be in scope. Right? Yeah. So, and you just need to have a Starlink and be able to connect. Yeah, so there are different ways of doing things. So there's not just one way of one solution. Not just one size fits all. There's no. You can actually just be creative and go talk to these MSPs. They'll be able to help you.
Have you got anything else to add?
Yeah, I'll say really quickly that we've done some pretty quick deployments ourselves, setting up people on our readiness side of the house. They've implemented enclave very quickly. We have, all kinds of different types of businesses, different sizes, different needs. We've deployed people without even any CUI, but they're just trying to be ready and have sort of this landing zone. And it is a relatively, at least with Microsoft GCC High, the way that we found it, the way that Raj spoke yesterday on enclaves, it's a really, Microsoft makes it pretty easy for you. If you have the right readiness partner that understands the controls and the way that Microsoft works with CMMC, it just makes it that much easier. It's pretty quick deployment, and it's really, the way that we're a Microsoft partner, we sell GCC and GCC High licenses, or resell. They're an annual license, so you can buy as many as you want, but you don't get a refund if you buy 10 and you only needed 6. You're still paying at like 1,000 plus. So you can always add. It's a lot harder to take away. So we always recommend starting small, get a feel for it, see how it works within your organization, and then see who actually needs to touch the UI. And once you're kind of in there, moving and feeling it, then add more as you go.
Yeah, that's the other great thing about the license is you can prorate. So say that you bought them earlier for the 1,000, and then later you need to add more, and say there's 6 months left, they're going to be $500 for the prorate. Just something to think about when you're trying to budget, right? So the thing that I think you brought up, Kyle, that's really important too, is you were talking about the VDI infrastructure. but earlier one of the primes was talking about printing. Now you just added the on-prem backend. The on-premise thing controls that have to be a part of that, right? So let's talk about that real quick because I think that's important for the group.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of the VDI, there's a FAQ, CMMC FAQ out there provided by the DoD CIO office, and also 32 CFR Part 170 that clarified if you have the VDI, virtual desktop interface, right? If you use that and your laptop have the VDI client, you connect, and all you do is what they call KVM, keyboard, video, and mouse movement. It doesn't transmit any CUI, it's only transmit your mouse movement, the video. Then the laptop is out of scope. The moment you download anything down to this machine, your laptop process, store, or transmit CUI, then that laptop is now in scope. If I need to download some stuff to my USB, that laptop is in scope, right? If I need to print, I have to use that laptop to print stuff to my printer, from the VDI. Yes, it's VDI as long as you don't print, but the moment you print, you're transmitting the CUI to the printer. Now you have to put your printer and also your laptop in scope. So yeah, just have to make sure that obviously scoping, you have to do it properly, and if you are not familiar, then either your internal CCP or somebody who are familiar with the scoping, they should be able to help you. But yeah, scoping, that's another thing as we hear from ACE yesterday. Scoping is probably the most important thing that you need to do. You have to do it right, because otherwise, if you don't have your scope right, your controls, right, your security requirements, your practices may not be designed properly, because you are not be able to protect all the systems that are in scope, right? If you forget about a couple of things, couple of devices or systems, tools, they're out of scope, but now you have to bring it in scope. Just give you an example, we have one computer, they're actually maybe managing ERP, just an example. Hey, I'm using this for managing ERP or ERP system. Normally we probably don't store any CUI onto this ERP system, but some of the companies may store your quotes with the specifications, with the drawing, make it easy for the business development people, salespeople, right? Now your ERP have those sensitive information that's considered CUI, but if you forget to put that in scope and you want to add that later in scope during the assessment, it will be a little bit too late. Or if you actually want to add them into the scope, you have to make sure that that system have to go through all the controls, right? Make sure your access control, authentication, authorization, audit, those controls have to, you have to consider those controls when you add one system or one devices or one tool software into your environment. So just make sure you have the scoping done properly.
Yeah, question? Yes, sir.
Yes. So actually, you started answering my question. Qualitative differences in terms of prep for an assessment between companies that will plan to store CUI and companies that do not. Like the MSP that wants to be there, wants to support companies that have CMMC requirements. No plans to store CUI. What are some of the considerations if that's the outlook?
Well, we see, go ahead.
I was going to say, we haven't worked with anybody that has no plans, just eventual plans. So they kind of prepare for it and are readying themselves for when that happens, so that they could bid should a contract fall on their lap that they want.
Yeah, I think they're also planning for the overmarking of CUI that happens a lot.
What, I'm sorry?
Overmarking of CUI that happens a lot, right? So they're planning for that. But I also think that it's also a marketing tactic by some firms too. some firms are trying just to go get their certifications just from a marketing aspect of things, right? Which is completely fine to do, right? But that's where that number of 80,000 firms that need to be assessed didn't put in the other firms that are trying to get the marketing aspects of things too. So that number's, higher, I would think, than the
So as far as from approaching a readiness for such a company, no plans to have actual CUI, but want to be certified for marketing purposes. If you could reflect on that, what should be done differently? What could be considered?
I would do
differently?
size of the company and what they're trying to do, I'd do an enclave, and that would be the quickest, fastest, least resistant thing to do, because once you do get CUI, that's where you're going to put it, right? Once you want to go get certified, that's where your scope is. It's not the entire company. That's the reason for those things, right? That's as long as, and again, I could be wrong, you guys want to, throw back in on that, but it just does not make business financial sense for their entire company to be lifted if they have no plans for CUI in the next, 6 months to 12 months. They don't need to go spend thousands and thousands of dollars on Microsoft licenses if they are a Microsoft shop to actually do that, when they can go and spend a very small amount and then be successful inside of an enclave approach.
Yeah, so some of the RFP, RFIs out there, they do. Some of them I have seen, they do. There are some like drawings or presentations that actually mark a CY. If you cannot handle CY, you will not be able to actually even get the RFP. Even though the RFP, the results may be like, we're just going to have these staffing with the GFE, right, the government issued computers. But during the bidding process, you still need to see the RFP that's marked as CY. So for that purpose, some of them, they created the enclave just for that purpose.
Yep, go ahead.
Question on the enclave. So if we try to have the foresight to include whatever it's going to have, but later, we have an assessor lined up or even have them come out, if we need to add something to that, what would be that process, or do we have to get reassessed at that point, or is that like, kind of a hard limit where you
So are you
spit
saying,
out and that's it?
Yeah, it's just asking some clarifying questions, because Kyle might ask some clarifying questions too, or Ashley. So are you talking about adding users, or are you talking about like you're completely changing the infrastructure for how it's set up?
You mentioned like the laptop not being in scope, but all of a sudden, no, we do need to download the file, so I need to add that laptop to scope, for example. I just wonder is that just a no-go? Do we need to completely revamp the whole thing, or what would be to amend that, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think if you have one laptop, adding like 5 more laptops, that's different than I don't have a laptop now, I want to add a new device, brand new laptop. If you have a new laptop, I think there will be considered a change, then it may require I cannot give you a definite answer, but it all depends on the situation, but it may require the additional reassessment.
Okay, so not just something we amend, but we're paying the fee to get reassessed if we're changing the structure like that. Okay.
Yeah, because
obviously, if you have if you use your existing or previous C3PAO, they may already have some familiarity with your environment. Right, it doesn't have to cost the same amount, or maybe it'll be reduced.
Oh, okay, I appreciate that. One more question. You mentioned the virtual desktop. Is that pretty much the only approved remote access that's allowed, or is there other options? Is there FedRAMP cloud options for remote access, or are we just looking at VDI? Yeah.
I'm really familiar with Azure.
I'm only familiar with VDI.
Yeah.
You're shaking your head, yeah?
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, yeah, there's other ones.
Yeah, so there are other ones. Azure is not the only game in town, right?
No.
There's Google, there are AWS.
But also VDIs.
Yes, yeah, they all have a virtual, and software-wise, there are Citrix, if you're familiar with them. So there are many other solutions, and if you actually just say create it using remote desktop or something that's more secure, you can create your own VDI environment, or VMware, they have VDI solutions as well. So you just need to make sure that when I'm connecting to this desktop, right, or when I'm remoting or doing some virtual desktop, connecting to this device, it's only, I cannot do anything. I cannot download or copy or print, nothing like that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, and maybe to extend this on his last question, when you have these customers or these clients that are gaining the certification for marketing purposes, have you seen cases where they then obtain CUI after the fact, and then they've had to go back and then either implement the change management process or then start the process of making changes such that they have to then reassess for level 2?
I haven't seen that yet, but are you talking about after they've already got their certification?
Yeah, I think they submitted
Well,
certain.
all right, so if they've got their certification, then they are certified to take on CUI, so they wouldn't have to, I wouldn't see a big change there because they already have everything they need to see and view CUI.
What stage are you talking about?
So let's say they don't have any CUI yet, and
Yeah.
then they want to get some. But so then they go, we're going to set up an enclave, right?
Yeah.
But then they start getting CUI, and they realize, oh crap, our business process extends to more than what this enclave contains, so we have to make a change. I'm asking if you've seen that phenomenon happen.
So now you just increase the scope, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah.
After before they knew what the scope was, or possibly could have been, because
Yeah.
they couldn't have taken CUI yet.
Yeah, then yeah, that's a change that that's what we were talking about earlier. We're gonna have to, hopefully you can go to the C3PAO that you work with and then say, hey, can we do a change order, and then go back through and then look at these things.
Okay.
So it's a lot less cost with just going with a different third party out there. But I think the way that we go about that when we price things is we don't, you'll see from some firms they'll charge, and not so much for that, but just say like if you have to go into a delta assessment. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, good term.
Okay, so if you're going into that, we don't charge a flat fee for a delta. We charge you by the hour to go back and look at those things. That's again way different than what I've seen other firms do. And it's again us just saying you might only have one control that we need to look at. Well, if it's only one control, I'm only going to charge you by the hour. I don't need to charge you some exorbitant large fee.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, because I think Joy was up here sharing earlier pricing for. She said low end was $50,000. I think she said for assessments. The assessments are lower cost than that. Just so you know, out there are assessments that are in the 30s and the 40s, but a lot of those are going to be enclaves because the scope is reduced. So just again, you got to put all those things into your mind when you're trying to think through the cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, so the cost is really different for enclaves because if you inherit a lot from the enclave
Right.
solution, the scope is reduced and we can make some adjustments.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, I guess, maybe clarify, elaborate on the purpose and the logic behind getting a CMMC assessment with no plans for CUI. If we think of like an MSP, there to support setting up accounts, providing, giving a level of access, but without access to the actual environment, so being able to fulfill processes, tickets that are specifically, will be evidence for a CMMC assessment of a customer. Again, no CUI on the part of the MSP, but the processes need to be there. So it's not just a performer, if I have CUI, I'll throw it somewhere. I want to be there and not need to be assessed myself or not to invest as much time sitting on my client's assessments.
Mm-hmm.
That's the perspective. So
Yeah,
the process to work, is there a qualitative difference in terms of the type of how I would prepare myself versus how my customers would prepare myself for somebody who would have CUI?
Same process.
Yeah. Same. Yeah.
Well, I will add. So I don't know if you're familiar with FedRAMP, or if you have FedRAMP, I'm certifying the services I provide to my customer. Right. If I'm conducting the CMMC, I'm assessing you as a company. How do you protect your CUI? It may not be the services that you provide to your customer, but how do you store the CUI? Right. So when you are, so there is a little bit of a difference. Make sure you understand that if you are MSP, when we come in to assess you, how you store CUI may not be how you provide the services for your customer. For example, change management. How do you manage change? I'm assessing how you manage your own change. I'm not assessing how you work with your customers on how to manage their change. Right. So if there are some things that you want us to take a look and be specific, include that in scope, and describe that in the SSP how you want to be assessed. Because it all depends on the scope. I'm expecting there's going to be a CMMC ramp somewhere, sometime down the future, because for MSPs especially, because for the MSP, we assess the MSP, then we have to also assess the shared responsibility matrix, right? And we have the shared responsibility matrix attestation on top of the CMMC, because that part is how you service your customers. So there is a little bit of a difference, but in terms of the CMMC itself, yeah, we were just assessing what you put in scope.
Yeah, and FedRAMP in itself, for anybody that's not really knowledgeable about FedRAMP, takes years, a year to 2 year minimum. If you'll go to the FedRAMP marketplace and you'll look about when a firm actually went in process to the time that they actually got their authorization, you're going to see years have went by, and you're like, wait now, I've done this in 6 months for CMMC. Why is it taking them so much longer? The number of controls that you have to meet for FedRAMP is so much more compared to, I think it's 1,500 is the 110.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
they have a lot. They go with what you call the NIST 853.
Right.
So they're like over like 15.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot.
It's a full baseline.
It's a
not
full,
just the C.
yeah, it's, yeah. So just, kind of put that too into a thought process, but, you also made a big statement, shared responsibility matrices. Those are huge. The SRM we look at all the time, right? Make sure that those things are covering what they need to.
Yeah, and if you're an MSP, share the responsibility matrix. If you're a contractor, if you're using a MSP, managed service provider to help you, when we, as an assessor, when we come in to assess you, we're going to assess the controls that are responsible by the MSP as well. So it will be good for the contractors to ask if the MSP already has shared the responsibility matrix. Basically, what the shared responsibility matrix will tell you, these set of 320 assessment objectives. These are the assessment objectives that are responsible, fully inheritable by the OSC, and it's fully responsible by the MSP. Right, they're going to have a list. And here are the shared responsibilities. That means here are the list of controls, the assessment objectives. This is the part that is done by the MSP. But then there are some responsibilities that are going to describe, hey, the customers, the contractors, you are responsible for these. And there's like and some of these, what we call them partially inheritable controls, right? And some of the controls that we'll see a list is like, these are fully responsible by the contractors, the OSCs. So so for example, training, right? Background check of your own company, that's your responsibility. The MSP have nothing to do with it. So those are the managed service providers as shared responsibility matrix that you want to go through, and they'll see what's inheritable, what's not. If it's inheritable, then the managed service providers, when it comes to the assessment time, it's going to be very clear. You have to document in your SSP to say which controls are fully inherited, partially inherited, or not inherited from your MSP. So as an assessor, we know exactly who to talk to.
Yeah. Also, buyer beware. If they say they get you 80% compliant by using their solution, what's the old adage? If it's too good to be true, probably is, right? So just go with that too when you're doing your evaluation. I know we're at time, but we can take a few more questions. I wanted to make this different than what all the others have been, because I wanted you to ask questions so that we could interact a little bit more and kind of get you out of the slides and just continually reading things. So give you a little bit more time.
I think we have one more question.
No, he's shaking off. Unless you
Take it
want
off?
to.
No. Okay. Any last questions? Otherwise, we'll take a quick break and one last
You got
question.
one?
Yeah, why not?
All right, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure if there's any MSPs in the room that are having sort of mystery questions about CMMC, but in regards to scoping, what would you say to them about like SPA and SPD? Because as an MSP, I imagine those are the two biggest things you're going to encounter the most.
Yeah, security protection assets.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. So what's the question?
Just giving some like overview on like kind of what they may need to scope in with SPA and SPD, because they may not understand kind of the nature of how that breaks down, right?
Yeah.
So security protection asset, these are, for example, these are the system devices that are protecting your CY. It might not actually store, transmit, or store CY, right? For example, if you have a firewall, yes, that's transmitting. It's protecting. Say it's protecting your environment, right? VPN is protecting your environment, and it could be your MDR and managed malware protection, for example, endpoint protection system, Active Directory. Right, Active Directory is to store the access. Who should have access, but it doesn't really store any CY, for example. Right, identity management system, your SIM, right, is storing your log, monitoring the activities. Those are what we call security protection assets. And the information, hopefully you don't, for example, you monitor the access, right? Hopefully you don't store the CY information in your log. Then the log, that's what we call security protection data. So that's a SPD. So yeah, you need to protect those information, but because those information are not CY, it's not considered control unclassified information. So you don't need to have you don't need to use a FedRAMP authorized or FedRAMP equivalent system to store this data. So yeah, so there's the difference. If you do have a system or a cloud that require to store, transmit, or transmit or process the CY, then you will need to have a system. If it's in the cloud, then you will have to have a FedRAMP authorized or FedRAMP equivalent system.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, Kyle, Ashley, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, y'all.